Hello and welcome back to the channel and another CC design contest playthrough, and this one is from agrainger and his course Cascada CC. Now I've been looking forward to this one. It's been in my queue for a while, and it's based on LA Country Club, which is a course I really like. Visually the bunkers look fantastic, the environment's really cool. It kind of fits what I some of the courses that I really enjoy, where there's lots of rolling undulation, and that plays a big part of it. I think it's, for those who don't know, it's hosting a major later this year and it should be really fun. Got a US Open there. So in terms of what you've done, manipulated tees. So we're going blue and 4. So blue goes with 4 and 2, and then black goes with 1 and 3, I think. So we're playing that. Otherwise, all the conditions are kind of as default. I'm just going to give it a go. So Granger's put in a number of good contest courses. He's kind of looking for that little leap that's going to take him to top 5 and beyond. I can't remember where your National Treasure course placed, but it's kind of just that little push. I think is all we're really needing. And environment work tends to be fantastic. So taking a zoom out, we've got a driving range. We've got kind of in the hills area surrounding LA. So you've got houses up on the hills, makes sense. City buildings, we won't go too close because they're not meant to be seen up close. They work quite nicely. You've got some mansions down here. We've got clubhouse does look nice. And what other things we got? 1,000 square foot plot and a par 5 under 550. If it is LACC inspired, I'd expect a little bit of a use of barranca, which we've got, kind of the sandy waste area. It's a little dip. It's not quite as severe as the one on Pasatiempo. One's on LACC, but there's still some elevation to them and kind of rooting around it. So it kind of goes through here, then up here. Yeah, so there it is as well. And then it kind of goes up this way too. And then it's here. Where is it? It goes this way. It sort of stops and comes in again down here. One thing that does strike me about the plot is it feels like you put barrancas in where you want them rather than carving one out when you're making the plot and then routing holes based on that. Just generally find you get much more interesting and unique golf balls when you do it the latter way. And also it will make more sense. As you can see from here, it's kind of going there, then stops, then there, then stops, then it kind of goes here and here. And then there's some of it over here. It doesn't necessarily all feel logical and tied together. When you kind of chisel one out that kind of runs from, if it's, I've done a lot of research on Bella. Yeah, and then we've got one up here as well, which again, like you've got lots of separate little ones, but not rather than one unifying feature. Whereas Bel Air is basically, which I've researched quite a bit, it's from high points down to low points, and they kind of run that way. Or same with Pasatiempo, it's kind of one that's pretty straight, and it's how you then fit the holes into that. I think you'll find that really pushes your designs, both in terms of the unique hole designs, like spend that time on plot creation and chisel it away, then come up with interesting holes around it. I think you'll find that makes, whilst it seems riskier at the time, it will lead to better hole designs and the payoff's far greater typically. Clubhouse looks awesome. I really like the use of bridges fanning upwards is a clever touch. I've not seen that before. Yeah, this looks great. Little putting greens, really nicely done. Yeah, I like this a lot. Outstanding work, because that's taken a good amount of time, and it's clearly got some payoff with when we get to 18. We'll see it, I think. Over here. Okay, as is, let's find our way back to first tee. It's not this side, so that must be 10. Over here. Over here. Ooh. Okay, so first hole, we're hitting over the barranca, so that's a nice kind of, we've talked about where that's been rooted, but that's a nice gentle introduction as to how you're doing it. So you hit over the hazard in a way that it's non-threatening, but but therefore you're getting introduced to a key feature early on. And we can hit, I guess we kind of want to hit up to here in order to open up the green. Amber kind of takes us away from it. I know what we're going for with the light rough bunkers. They do look a bit odd when you're not using light rough anywhere else in the course. And I think with the width of fairway you're going for, which is not super wide, taking light rough away on the outside is pretty hard on playability for CC. As I can tell you now, I will be missing some fairways. Longer hitters have to be wary of that bunker, and I'm a fan of a hazard that's in play for the guys who are longer but not the shorter players, because it kind of evens the playing field and means that Tigers can't just grip and rip. The bunkers themselves look fantastic. I would probably like to see some more planting around the trees or use of the burned out heavy rough texture or something. It looks a little barren. You don't need much. It doesn't need to be flooded with grasses, but little grasses or bushes or removing heavy rough, which will work great in Delta, really help. As for the green, quite heavily contoured, and that is an LACC thing. It's pairing that with CC difficulty, basing quite challenging going for a CC course. I said this on the not Spirit's Promise. That was this previous one, 5 Points Ridge, where it went for Pinehurst #2. That course was for US Opens. LACC obviously hosting US Open this year. Quite a tricky choice going for that for CC. I think with this pin, there's a lot of danger around it. I'd have probably taken this runoff and brought it in just a little. If you raise up this part of the green so it's flat near it, the risk with these runoffs is once you get slightly past the hole onto this light yellow, it's not stopping. So you can have the same thing but working in a friendlier manner where you make this part of the runoff more severe, flatten out the top part, and it will stick near it, therefore giving you more pinnable space. But if you do hit it, you're off further. That would kind of be what I'd like to see a little more here. I can see this is quite a compartmentalized green. I guess the pin positions are at the four extremities of it, which works. I do think it's a very tough hole if you were to miss the fairway, and given that we don't have light rough, that needs to be a consideration. What green speeds? 143 is appropriate. Cool. But there is fairway around the back of the green. Maybe would have liked to have seen it around the left-hand side as well. I think you've absolutely nailed the environment work with the pine straw and the types of trees that are coming out of it as well. Looks really good. Do you think grasses generally are missing? The barranca just feels a little empty. Same with around here and these trees. Yeah. I think also if you were going with light rough, it would tie the bunkers and the light rough texture in a little bit more neatly. The other way you could have done it would have been to use your heavy rough texture on the bunkers and light rough everywhere else. That might have been, and then remove heavy rough. That might have been the way to do it. Because if you're playing into the bunkers, that's the hazard. Just a thought, which normally I wouldn't recommend, but for here, I think it could have worked. I'd probably like to see a bit more fairway around here just to allow you to land a ball on for a 215-yard par 3, and we're downwind, so you've given us a backstop. With this one, probably just this slope, I'd move the pin a touch away from and a touch further away from the backstop, maybe, so just a little bit further forward, maybe lower this just a touch. But I think that should carry. Yeah, we're going to play left anyway. Oh, it was the club. Oh, I don't know if it was the club. That's really gone. That's a tough pin and win combination, and appreciate you haven't set it. But it's one where if it plays downwind, that's where this front run-on area needs to be really quite generous. I like the little quasi punch bowl in the back. Yeah, I think this green works. Our pass start we'll take. I'd say it's definitely on the challenging end of courses that we've had so far in this contest. There's a few that have been, I would say, too difficult. This one's on the it is probably a touch too difficult for CC, certainly for all levels of CC. So 452 up 15 feet, I'm immediately thinking I probably wouldn't disconnect this green. You've got to allow some sort of run on approach. And it's just, I mean, yes, you can lay up, but if anyone's laying up, what are they leaving themselves with? Or into wind, we're probably taking that 272, 180 yards into a disconnected green with no fairway short. I don't think anyone's taking that on, really. So therefore, the strategy from this tee shot kind of becomes removed based on the green complex because I can't afford to lay up. And I don't think the fairway chokes down that much, which kind of makes it a, I wouldn't say a nothing tee shot, but it's just hit the fairway and then progress to the next shot. Really a setup shot. I like the green. I guess it favours you being slightly more to this side. Again, I don't think the green necessarily asks for any particular angle play. Both, it's requiring an exacting shot. Uphill 23 feet into wind. Yeah. And like here, how you've tied in the remove heavy rough texture up here is makes the planting work better. I like the boundaries, and you can see the environment, the kind of environment's a bad word. You can see the city backdrop and where the course is placed. That gives it this sense of place, which I really like. I think you've nailed that. There's lots to like here. I think just playability wise, this hole could be doing a bit more. If I was going to bail, high is probably not where I'd have missed. That might be the worst miss. Yeah, this is one thing I mentioned on my greens videos that I did is you want to be really careful about going for a slope downhill, short plateau, then to another slope downhill. You've really got the risk, particularly if you remember beginner players when we started playing this game. Controlling putt distance is really tough. And whilst experienced players, that now comes second nature. When you start out, and we will get those kinds of people on CC, this is a real nightmare of a putt. And I mean, I've hit a really bad shot, but this was a bit of the danger of the kind of three-tiered sideways green that we saw. Especially when I'm having to aim this far up. I don't know, that's probably too hard. Yeah, I mean, that's gone. And I'm pretty experienced, and even for me, that was a tough one to judge. And this pin just needed a bit more breathing space. Oh, much better putting uphill. And like to an extent, that is on me for missing on the low side. But when you haven't given us a miss short, it's kind of purely lateral. I think that's going to happen. Okay, first par 5, it narrows. But actually, your better angle, I'd say, is probably slightly from the high side. Although ground game approach is not totally, but it's kind of taken away on this one. I'm starting to really feel the absence of heavy rough, of light rough even here. I would really appreciate it because I feel like R5 and 585. Just look at my layup areas. And I can lay up. It feels like a bit of a forced layup. I don't know. There are layups you feel good about, and there are ones where you feel like slightly less so. And I appreciate that I can still potentially reach this. I hadn't realised, but up 30. Put somewhere out here and see what happens. The subtle difficulty of the camber is a good one. I would just allow more fairway out here. I know you're trying to kind of encourage layup zones, but I think you can't use this fairway to run it onto the green as much as you might like. And with the run on, it really helps to have basically, say, the kind of more strategic player, you aim around about here, you've got all this forgiveness of this fairway that nobody else is using, and it will probably kick you on. Or you bail right and you get that little reward anyway. It would just be nice to have that option rather than having to be as precise. Could be it. Yeah, I've hit the area. Feel like this might feed there. And I do like actually that it's, I mean, in this wind condition, I can reach with 2 3-woods and take the risk out off the tee, but sacrifice that bit of control on the second shot. I think the bunker visuals you've gone for, you've absolutely nailed. They look really, really good, and they're not easy to do. Just think their placement is a little punitive in the sense of like it removing shots or potential shots from the player. Well, that went on a bit. It was above the hole and didn't realise. But there's different ways to get the ball to that pin, which I like. Yeah. Skinny par 3, kind of justified by all of the bunkers. I think looks really good. One thing I might do would be to vary the scale of some of these bunkers. Like when all 3 are big, it just looks. I think you could, by varying them, you'll get a better composition. Breaking. I know LACC is known for big kind of funky bunkers, but you can chuck in the odd little one as well. And George Thomas is certainly known for big funky ones, but even within those, he does vary size and shape. And this works for a really short hole because what you've done is use the bunkering to justify this really kind of awkward green shape really nicely. If this is a green shape that we put down on a normal hole without the bunkers around it, it would look mental. But on this, it looks really good. I am directly in between. Planting detail level, I would like to see a bit more around these rather than just the 2 bushes. And same on the in front. Like I just think little highlight grasses would take this course. We'll elevate it that little bit higher. It's not a good swing. I'm not good with partials. I suspect I've now got a horrible left to right putt. So this is one where I'm considering. I feel like I'd have to chip this. And I think that's because that spine at the back is just a bit too severe. And this has to be something that comes up in your play testing, I think. We're going to try and give it a go because I need to check. Maybe. It's right on the edge. It's certainly, I would say, a bit too far for CC. I don't know if I would have to. Fun 2-putt though. Like green speeds definitely help with that. I defer to people who play more regularly on tour. I don't play on tour, but it would raise a question. Okay, hole 6, short par 4, which we like. So swings out here, and then we've got a funky green tucked, well, slightly side on green tucked over a bunker. Got some interesting slopes to it. And Barranca now behind. So how you put the Barranca in, I think, comes into play in different ways. Here, I guess it's slightly long. It feels like it isn't really integrated into the hole that much. I wonder whether you could have put the green a little bit closer to it or worked the hole so that the Barranca comes in a little bit more strategically, rather than just you're running through the fairway and there's the Barranca and you're never going to run into that anyway. I guess downwind we can clear those bunkers. Into we can't. I mean, it's kind of similar to the par 5 tee shot. Not the par 5 tee shot, the par 4 that preceded it. it's one of those where the tee shot is very much just a setup shot because I can't generate an angle to this pin wherever I go. And now we're seeing the heavy rough impact because this is where it plays really punitively. I've got a bunker in front of me which I was never going to be able to get around. It's not a long shot, but there is no chance of me landing on the green or holding it. So having to go down to 5 iron, which will end us up in the front bunker probably. Okay, light rough works out. But you can see the absence of light rough. Like if you just miss the fairway, and granted that was a really poor tee shot, but I think that's the sort of shot we need to be planning around with CC. Like, people are going to hit that. So when you are then angling this green in such a way, even on a short hole, it does make that tricky if you don't have that light rough buffer. And I'm all for that's a dreadful putt. I'm all for people occasionally not always being able to reach a par 4 and 2 if they've hit a really bad tee shot. But it's how we do that. I think on a long par 4, that's acceptable. On a short par 4, giving them kind of no recovery option by, even if you partially open the green and therefore for certain pins you can't get close, you're just playing to the fat of the green. And that's fine. Taking away the whole of the front of the green gets problematic. Okay, lighting looks great on this one. Barranca kind of cutting in front and down the right hand side. We can't totally see all of it. I don't know if it's ever really worth taking on this risk. Certainly for this pin, I can go around the back. I would lose the centerline bunker and just play with your camber personally. This is one where the Barranca feels a bit awkward because you've got your Barranca down here, then the plot then rises up and goes back down again towards the next one. They don't really feel like they work as harmoniously together as they could. Now that said, the view to the clubhouse is awesome. The view to this R3 looks great. Really like we can see this green or tee box just next to us. At least I've had tempo for the most part. Most playthroughs I haven't. I think with this hole, camber's kind of all you really need. Yeah, I get a better angle slightly by going right. It is very hard to play with a hole where you hit to the outside of the dog leg. I think I probably want to funnel this onto this side of the bunker anyway, so playing left is probably better. I'd also be continuing your sandy part up to here because that's part of your Barranca. It just feels like it kind of stops and the dip remains, which just for visual impact rather than. I do like that we're varying the scale on the bunkers. That makes a lot of sense. If you'd taken off the whole of the inside, that would hurt here. And this one's a par 5, so I'm but you can see the benefit of giving some run on both front and back gives me options as to how I play this one. Somewhere over here. Oh, moved further than I thought it would do. Oh, that will do. But that's the forgiveness. I think if I hit the line I want, then I'm probably bouncing in. That's forgiveness. I could land it here, I could land it here, I could land it on the green. Lateral dispersion is probably ending up in sort of the same spot. That's kind of what we want a little bit more for the player who's looking for that. The person who takes dead aim misses, like widens their risks, essentially. I think this one's straight much this way. There we go. I do like that as a change up par 5, and I thought it uses the Barranca a bit better, benching the green into it. Really cool cross course views. Okay, we're now hitting over the Barranca, the separate Barranca. Yeah. Drivable par 4, very much drivable. Funky boomerang green. They might exaggerate this dip a little bit more. I think funky green shapes, you've really got to work hard with the land in between them. Alright, so what are we trying to do to dissuade me from taking driver? Well, Barranca short is a definite miss that we want to avoid. We're playing slightly uphill, so it's going to... Again, the Barranca itself probably feels a touch empty. I'm not going to keep harping on about that, though. That's the last mention, I think. I say that. I like how these bunkers push me slightly to this side, and if I want to go really pin hunting, I've got to be a bit longer. There's a bit more forgiveness here, and that will take the ball round just a touch. Generous layup area. I don't know if I get much more reward from going further. I feel like this one's one to play sensibly. And play the most timid tee shot known to man. And we're still don't have a full wall up wedge. Bunkers frame really nicely from this direction, which is tough to do. I've got to account for wind fully. I don't know if it's my favourite short par 4, but I think it's interesting, and the quirky green shape definitely adds something. That front pin I could have gone for. I kind of wanted to try something different. There was enough there to make me think that laying up was kind of the right idea. Okay, Barranca here, fully planted, very... that looks much more intimidating as a result. This green has a lot of slope to it. Which kind of means if you are slightly off your spot, you're facing a really helter-skelter putt. I think this area I'd have toned down a little bit. The back area, this is more CC friendly, this area. This area is just a bit wild. Yeah, I do think we've missed the mark a touch on CC difficulty. It's not... It is not outrageously difficult, but when you couple the crazy greens with... I don't know what's going to happen here. With the lack of light rough, that becomes really challenging. Who knows what's happening with that? Better result than I probably could have hoped for. Shame, because this pin's actually in a fairly friendly little pocket. I come back a touch. Yeah, a little. Take a bogey after that tee shot. Getting a great look at the clubhouse. It's been a fun first 9 holes. Okay. So playing with the Barranca now on the outside of the dog leg. So we've now got a Barranca down here as well. This is down the other side of the clubhouse. Yeah. I'm going to go with you. You kind of just started putting them in after you were routing the holes, my guess. Long par 4. Okay. Well, the green looks... Yeah. I think we're doing a bit too much on the long par 4 to make this challenging. So firstly, we can run out of fairway. If we do run out of fairway and we've got no light rough and it's a long par 4, we've got to be thinking really carefully about on a long par 4 with no light rough, you've got to be thinking really carefully about where you cut it off. I can carry these bunkers and shorten the approach. I'm okay with this. That brings on a bit more risk. Or I can play out here. There's still a bit of sloping here to be mindful of. We're going to run out. Yeah. Okay, so I tried to take a bit off it. I'm obviously not successful. Got a good lie. That's fortunate. But in terms of running the ball into this pin, you've got this mound and slope here that's kind of making that hard to judge. There's a lot that this hole is doing without really thinking about the length of it enough. But we need to be flattening out this area a bit more to make it conducive to running balls onto the green. That runoff slope I would probably be softening as well, because balls around about here are potentially being pushed towards that, and that's going to grab anything from about here and take them off. And then like long, if we're too long, a long par 4, if you're getting your distance control slightly wrong, you're off the green again. Like long par 4s, we really want to be doing as much as possible to keep the ball on. And we've disconnected the green. Kind of like there's a split fairway as well. So if I got a really bad lie, that's potentially penalising me even more. All of this stuff on a par 5 I'm good with. You're giving me that extra shot to play with. I'm assuming there'll be people saying, but par is irrelevant, etc. Yeah, to an extent, but to an extent it really, for a lot of people, isn't. So, we made a par. I don't think it's that far off, but you maybe look at just one of those elements. I would probably have just made your green complex more friendly, put it in a bowl, and then have it really gather shots so people can play into an area. Okay, we do have an angle play here. We want to be down to the left, and that makes me think about how I'm using this dip, which is good because if I get left side of the fairway, I get around this bunker. If I go right side, I will get around this bunker. I think angle play on this hole works really nicely. This is one of the, I'd say one of the better tee shots. Planting maybe a bit big around here and raised, as it's kind of covering some of the fairway surface up there, which kind of like it's down here, so you can see the fairway above the planting rather than here it's obscuring a touch. And it looks maybe a little bit high compared to the tree height, just a touch overgrown perhaps. I think I've gone through the fairway again. Yep. And you can see you go through slightly and then you're in heavy rough, and that's the variable lie, and you're hitting into heavily contoured greens. Oh. And that will probably be how they set up the US Open here. But we're just not designing for a US Open. Hoping that might roll out just a touch. Nope. All the way off seems harsh. Yeah. Again, you've got that slope towards another slope, so that's why this is looking a little bit more punitive than it was. It'll be one of those where I think, I know when I had early playthroughs from my gym game from people, you see a shot react and it's like, oh, that's not what I wanted. My guess is that would be one that you're seeing, just like, oh, that's not where it should have ended up. It should have been bottom tier. Just be really careful with that red slope towards another red slope. Especially as if we're landing here, we're rolling all the way down here, all the way down here, all the way down here. Like, that's going to be really tough for some people to take, to be pin high all the way down to here, particularly on CC. I could see this being on Elite with no problems. I think that would be about the level this course has hit. I meant to mention on the last hole, tree line looks really good as well. Like, I love the way you've done that. I think, let's leap back. The boundaries of the property, I think you've done really nicely. Obviously, they're not that heavily planted, but I think just the texture work, heavy rough to that texture to tree line, this looks nice and clean, and that section is kind of where you'd expect it to be sort of more manicured. So it works really well. I think it's just that barranca element I'm not sure totally got the scrub style planting for. Even if LACC doesn't, it kind of just, which it probably doesn't, but it just looks a little bit bare in video game land, where I think we have to be a bit more creative sometimes with our environments. Okay, we've You've given me more space this time, but this is another long par 4 where you've disconnected the fairway. And again, we want to be really mindful of that. But this one, we can run it on a little bit more. That's a tough approach shot. I'm just going to hit out to hopefully the fat part of the fairway. We have an aiming stick. Oh, we do. I'm not sure why is the aiming stick putting me over here? I think it's slightly misaligned because I'm on the right half of the fairway anyway, which is pushing me further left, presumably. Okay. Again, with the kind of friendly green complex, like, I don't actually have a problem with a long par 4 where the green runs away from you because it can encourage the person to hit long, but you need to be able to hit short. But you really need to be able to see what you're coming into. And so by making that blind, I think we've really got to ask for a very receptive green. I know we have scout cam and things, but real life principles, etc. It's also tough when the whole green doesn't run away from you. It's kind of on this spine, which is an interesting concept for where to place a green. I don't hate the green at all. I just think it's not necessarily paired with the right approach shot, which is kind of a common comment, I think. That was always a slow. I chickened out on the approach. Yeah, there's a green you really need to be able to see, I think. It's not a good chip shot, but the contours mean that I could miss short, which is nice. So they do offer some forgiveness. I would definitely be leveling out this slope, because if you're slightly past the pin, you are running way off. Like, we want to be on a long par 4, we want to be building as much forgiveness past the pin as we can, really, because we're asking people to hit that long shot. They're giving up distance control a bit. A13, another par 5, really squeezed tee shot. This one feels like we haven't really done this before, and it feels like a forced layup, which I'm not a fan of. I don't know with this wind whether this is doable. Not with that tee shot, I don't think. Oh no. We get very lucky. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the tee shot. Generally not a fan of squeezing tee shots. Plus, I think this is the sort of green complex I'd want people hitting an approach into. Visually, there's something off about the bunkers, just the kind of staggered nature, ... Feels a bit too, what's the word, ordered, for lack of a better word. Maybe another one there or another one little banked in here, or more fairway sweep. Actually, that's partly what it is. More fairway sweeping round somewhere would really help. It's the way the fairway really chokes around this bunker. I think it's partly doing it for me. Okay, see what happens with that one. Green's going to slow it up some, just whether it crests that hill. Excellent. That's a good shot. We like that. Cool little panoramic view, and I love the houses up there. That works really nicely. Yeah, I think with this one, there's probably enough forgiveness on the green. That bottom pin, if you go long, is a nightmare. I think it is definitely elite level, and like that's the biggest knock I'd say I have on the course. That and the kind of occasionally the holes that I guess push me into just hitting driver because I have to. Well, kind of the difficulty is really born out of the lack of light rough and the greens. Okay, so we have to be right for this green all flowing away. I don't feel there have been many friendly green complexes on here. We've taken out the front way to these pins. It's then running away from the pin, kind of in all directions, making us carry as much of this side of the bunker as we can, which I like. But if you are bailing out, you're taking on both the bad angle and the distance. and the green running away, and there's just nothing to help you. So it kind of, this is another one where I kind of feel like my decision's basically made for me, and it's just hit a good shot or else, which we're not. And we're ending up in sand. Probably better. Well, it's definitely better than the heavy rough, but I do have the angle. That's enough. I don't know if it is. I think I'm on that awkward spot between clubs again. Oh, I was. That's about as good a shot as I can hit. One thing I have learned about designing difficult courses is it can make them really hard for people to like or love. And like when you aren't building in enough forgiveness, that does really impact a player in terms of how positively they feel about a course. If they feel like they're constantly being put in a bad position, that's really tough. I think this is kind of on the verge of doing that. Like it's just that wrong side of severity. So not only for this contest, but just generally. This pin offers a little bit more friendliness. A little bit more. The backstop's not huge for a long shot. But again, if I can't quite reach it, it's a forced layup by where you've bunkered. Like I just keep thinking really carefully about taking away the front of greens. They're in light rough. And okay, we probably can, but downwind, I mean, to be honest, the layup is the prudent play, so we're going to go for it. And I like that little bunker beforehand making me think about layup zone. What I would probably do with this one, zoom for a sec, because all this is making me think is, can I clear this or can I not? It's the same width this side as this side, so it's not making me think about an angle play. For this pin, you want to be this side. Why can we not allow some fairway down here, push the pot play here, and maybe not even that far because there's a big camber to get down to there. Like allow people this bit of fairway down here, have the fairway wind around maybe a bit more, or allow fairway kind of in more places, like the whole width. Pop that little bunker somewhere, not middle, but people can play here, but they leave a tougher angle. They can play down here and they get a better angle. I think we need to play with layout zones a little more to just give people more options as to where they're playing. That felt like a very slow. We've gotten lucky with that. So I'm happy with the layup. If I'd ended up long of the pin on my second, I don't think I'm ending up with getting this close. Which on a par 5 I think works really nicely. That's a solid uphill hole as well. The one thing I'd add that I haven't mentioned is you have disconnected the fairway twice on that hole, because we have the cross bunkers off the tee shot followed by the cross bunkers on the approach, and I'd say that's really penal in terms of you're asking for forced carries twice. Generally, most holes don't ask for it once, and it can work nicely when done as a kind of change up. It's just been a little too common. So another forced carry on this one, which takes away ground game, and then green running away. Yes, it's a shortish par 3, but we're putting quite a few. We're kind of putting the same obstacles in the way of the player a number of times. Probably needs to sit. I didn't really factor in. Oh yeah, it really does. And then kicks way long. It's a bad shot. It deserves what it gets. Do you think we're still? I don't think this needs to flow front to back. I think the two wings that you've got, if you're missing this slightly, say here, you're going slightly long, you're going all the way down here, and you're facing that putt down. I'd say front to back has been green's sloping away from you. Let's call it that. We've overused. Not do much better than that. There we go. Planting again looks really good. I think the general environment level has been good. The kind of detail level, as mentioned, I think you could, to be winning or really contending at the very top of contests, I think we need a little bit more. Sort of blind, well, semi-blind tee shot where we run out of room. Generally flatter green, which I appreciate. Be careful asking for a partial drive to where you can't really see with no light rough. Kind of similar concepts as the previous holes. But I appreciate the shorter hole and the more forgiving green. This one feels a little like a transition hole. And I was worried about this. Yeah, okay. So I'm kind of glad that shot happened because, as you can see, I've landed left of the pin and it's obviously rolled out, and I haven't factored in roll out as much as I should have done, but CC players will do that. To roll off the green, off that slight slope, down into heavy rough, it is a real no-no, even on a very short hole. We don't really want to be putting people chipping in heavy rough if we can possibly avoid it. I like what the hole is trying to do in playing that, in like considering where you're landing and rolling that shot. That's fun. And it's paired with a very generous tee shot. Okay, finishing up, short par 4, side on green. It's kind of, I guess we're protecting this layup zone pretty heavily. This feels very penal. If I'm hitting here, that's pretty shallow, pretty narrow area. If I'm hitting here, that's narrow. If I'm hitting here, that's narrow. I'm laying back with a 3-iron, not much more forgiving. But we need a bit more width somewhere. CC or not, we need some more width somewhere. Actually, I think this is probably the area you're trying to protect the most with the bunkers. Yeah, I think this is the most forgiving to hit. I love the look into the clubhouse. Again, we've taken away the front of the green, which on this length of hole, I do not really have a problem with. What a 94% drive into wind does. Yeah, I think that's the easiest area to hit. And it feeds me around to a better location. Hit sandwich. I'll say, I kind of wonder whether finishing on 9 would have been a better finisher. Just a thought. There we go. So finish on -4, thanks solely to the back 9. Scoring wise, not maybe coming out of my highest scoring courses. I don't really keep track of that. It's more just like a holistic view of difficulty. So fairway and reg 65%, which therefore tallies with a low green and reg percentage. It's, I would say, too tough. Small child interruption. We did well. Yeah, it's too tough for the CC generally. The light rough, I think, is something I wish you'd reconsider because that makes a huge difference. And I think this course needed, with the tighter fairways you've gone for, like not just a standard band of light rough, it needed a little bit more than that. Because that would have massively increased playability. Secondly, the disconnected greens and the reliance on those. The heavily contoured greens, like I think one of these elements you can go with, the front to back greens, like and the camber, one of those elements you can go with when you chuck all of them in play at once. That really ups the difficulty level, and I think it's just not really understanding or considering how those will all work together to make it challenging for a player. Environment, I think, generally really good. I would love to see that little bit more detail planting to take it over the top, but you've nailed the area that you're going for, certainly. One thing, as mentioned at the start with the routing, I think putting a big hazard like a barranca or a big feature down first and then routing around it, like the very best courses that we've seen designed will all work that way. because that produces those sorts of more creative results, but will also lead to a plot that feels cohesive. I kind of felt that the Barranca popped up sporadically and kind of did so when you felt you hadn't really used it in a while, or you just needed something, or it was just, it kind of doesn't really tie together that well for me. Um, Otherwise, playability, like there's lots of holes I found interesting. I think there's a couple of tee shots that I'd say are a bit more throwaway. I want to say the par 4 sixth was an example where it was just like I have to hit the fairway, so I'm forced into hitting driver, and or 3-wood layup area is the same as driver in terms of width, and because of the way the green is, I have to hit driver, and it just becomes hit driver, and there's no real angle benefit. Whereas conversely, I think I was like I want to say 12, or was it 11? I think maybe 11, where there's that cambered fairway to that kind of heavily contoured green where I rolled down off the front. I think with that one, you are giving me a bit more of an angle play, so I prefer that one. A bit more like that and a bit less like 6. I think par 3s generally, they're in really good sites. I think the greens again need to be doing a little bit more for them. They were bit penal, I would say. Generally, par fives had some of the more interesting approaches on the course. Just try to work your par five strategy a bit less away from just pinching driver, because that kind of happened on a few of them. Otherwise, though, there's loads to really appreciate and enjoy. Like the technical stuff's all really good. Um, that's absolutely not an issue. The hole designs, when you do nail them, are really good. You totally can get there. Planting looks really nice. That environment creation around the course, I think, is really good. Lots to enjoy. So, as ever, hopefully that helped. Best of luck in the contest. I certainly see this as top 10, probably pushing top 5, depending on how severely judges rate it on difficulty. It's kind of there or thereabouts for me. Best of luck with the contest and see you again soon.